Well, I got the 797 out here. I'm going to try filing this chain. After I run it the other day, I found a new, well, it's not new, but a fuel cap with a vent in it, a duck bill, and put an O-ring on it. I dug out a new air filter. That one looks a little better. It's a brand new one, nicer than the other one. I still don't have the screws, but I've got some screws here in a bin up there that I took out of a 740 that I took apart here a few years ago. So I'm gonna, for the flywheel cover, so I'll dig those screws out there for that, put that flywheel cover on. I got a new file, square chain file, square file, and I'm going to try to figure out how to. I don't think that's going to work. Might work. I'm going to try to figure out how to file that chain. I'd say it was ground square, and I don't have a grinder to grind it square. So anyway, I'm going to see if I can touch it up a little bit and see if I can make it cut better. Got it set up here on the bench. Just put the bar in the vise to hold it, and we'll get to work on it and see what I can figure out. Now, what I like to do on a chain when I'm going to file it is to pull it through, and you can usually find some place where the chain has been broken, put together, and you'll wind up with a couple of teeth on the same side, or a break in the teeth, or a couple of teeth closer together, or something like that. No, I'll usually I like to pull the chain through like that and find a good spot to mark it, or for index it. See, right here we've got two teeth that are close together. It's a skip tooth chain, so normally you've got a couple of links between them. This one, there's only one link, so this is where the chain was put together. So that's a good place, good place to start to file, and use that for an index mark indicator. Okay, so like I said, this is a first for me. I've never filed one of these before. I've never seen one filed before. This chain I thought was ground, and I've got this file that I got from the saw shop. It's got sharp edges, kind of a flat file with square, or with 45-degree, looks like, edges on it. I don't know if it's 45 or not, but anyway, what I found, I tried putting it in here like this to cut it on the 45s, and that leaves too much overhang on the tooth face, and it didn't match up with where the grind marks were on the tooth. So what I found is if I put this at an angle like this, with the face here against the tooth, then I can adjust my flatness or cut on the face of the tooth there, the lip, by adjusting the angle of the file like this, and it almost matches what was already in there. So by filing Well, that's not, there we go, like that. So this point of the file here is going down into the gullet, this face here is filing the side plate, and then this long flat is filing the top of the tooth, and then adjust my angle, and that way I can get my so it's not undercut too much. We'll try it on a new tooth here, and I drop the heel of the file down about 10 degrees and that's pretty much matching the contour of the tooth as it was filed previously. I give it a little bit more of an angle, about a 35-degree angle instead of a 30-degree angle, to match what was already there. So this flat face is filing the cutting top of the tooth, and this angle, acute angle off from that, is cutting the side plate, the side cutter. So it's a matter of adjusting. So there's several angles you have to adjust on this. You have to adjust the angle of this surface for the top plate, so you get the right. See, a lot of chains are filed with too much overhang on that. It's undercut too much, and it needs to be not quite flat, but it needs just about a 10-degree or so pitch underneath that tooth. And so changing this angle like this is going to be a factor on that. If it's down too much like this, you're going to undercut it too much, and if it's up too high, it's going to be too square. So you've got that angle to adjust. Back and forth like this gives you your cutting angle, 30, 35, 25, whatever you want, and then up and down this way is another angle. So there's several angles to adjust on this. We'll find out when we get it out and put it in the wood, but now that's coming awful close to the grind that it already had in it. And I had nothing to go by except for that. So well, anyway, I'll try that. I'll keep going on that. It's a long ways to go on that chain. Okay, I've done a few more teeth on here now. As I'm going through this, it's getting a little bit, and looking, it's getting a little bit better. Like I said, there's several angles you have to consider on here. This junction between the top plate and the side plate is a sharp angle. The side plate is cut at a sharp angle, rather than a, like with a round file, everything's curved, and this corner winds up being a sharp angle just because of the way the tooth is built. With the square file, this side plate winds up being a sharp angle, the top plate winds up being a sharp angle, and the point in there winds up being a sharp angle. So there's several angles on there. Like I said, you've got angles on the file. You've got this angle between the on the edge of the file, between the two sides of the edge. It winds up being down here on the bottom of the tooth. I don't think it has anything to do with. In fact, I think I've read that you should take a round file or a grinder and clean all of that that's left over. It leaves a little tit sticking up there. It's a sharp peak sticking up there, but basically it would interfere with the clearance of the chips out of there, which is what the gullet does, is hold the chips and gives a chance for them to clear out. So this angle between the side plate, the side of the file, and the edge of the file angle, then that becomes that should go right into the angle between the top plate and the side plate, and that creates a sharp angle there. So this file has to be held down at about a 10-degree angle or so to get in that in that spot. And then this front face right here, the long face, is what cuts the top plate, and then by adjusting it up and down, you get the angle of the relief underneath the cutter, the overhang on it, which you don't want too much of an overhang. Comes down like this, you wind up with a lip on there, but at the same time you wind up changing the angle of this side plate. So like I said, there's several angles there. I had to find I took a handle off one of my other files to put on here, so I've got a handle on here. But so by keeping the handle down about 10 degrees, if you pull it up, you can still run that in there, but you wind up with a not quite as good of an angle between that top plate and that second side plate. So by keeping it down, that cleans up nicely, and that gives me almost exactly the profile that was already in there. So this chain may have been filed and not ground like I first assumed. It may have been filed just like this. What I'm doing is trying to copy what was already here, and this is what I'm getting, just like this. And that's a pretty good angle that this side plate is up, so it's not. We'll see how it cuts. That proof is in the pudding, as they say. But you can see why that's critical. You've got several angles there, both on the way I hold the file and angles in the tooth to consider to keep straightened out straight. And you want to keep them all the same on all the teeth on both sides. Okay, so I went around this twice. And the reason I did it twice is because the first time I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. And once I got it, I had angles changed and stuff. My perception of what was going on changed as we went around. So I just went around it twice, just made a light cut to make sure all the angles were the same on all the teeth the second time. More or less. I still got some that are not quite the same. But anyway, so that side sharpened up pretty good. That I could see why. It's not rocket science. It's not anything that's all that complicated, but it is a lot more complicated than filing a round file chain, a chipper chain with a round file, or even a semi-chisel bit chain with a round file. There's a lot more. The angles are a lot more critical. You have to hold several angles. And with a round file chain, basically it's pretty simple. You figure out the angle that you want the tooth to be, and then you have a little bit of a down angle on the handle to file up on it, and then the amount of overhang you have on the tooth is the only other thing that's critical. And trying to keep all the teeth fairly uniform in size of the top cutter and all that stuff, but that's just incidental. I mean, that's stuff that's on the side. The main thing is just filing through. You want to generally keep 1/5 of the file above the top of the tooth, so you get the right relief angle on the top. So a lot of people wind up filing it too deep and wind up with too much overhang on their tooth. And so the tooth, while it's really sharp immediately, dulls right away. It breaks off, and you wind up chipping the chrome back and having to file the chain back to correct for it. The corollary to that is that when you correct for that, then you'll hold the file up too high, and you'll have too blunt of a face on there, and so you won't have the entrance angle that you need for cutting, and so it'll cut slower. That's not as big of a deal. So anyway, round filing is relatively easy. Square filing is a little bit more complex because you have these multiple angles. You have the angle on the side plate, you have the intersection there between the top plate and the side plate, and of course you have the angle of the tooth, the cutting angle of the tooth, you know, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, 35 degrees, whatever. I've read guys saying on these square tooth ones they go to 25 degrees, 20 degrees, something like that. This one was obviously filed at about 35 degrees, between 30 and 35 degrees. That's just a wild ass guess on my part, but it's an educated guess because I've done this a couple of times now. So anyway, now it's a matter of figuring out how to turn this sucker around and doing the other side. I've got a nice vise here to hold this on this side, and when I flip it around the other way, I don't have any way to hold it. It's going to be, you know, with this long bar hanging way out over, and I could file it backwards like this, but that's a little bit more difficult to do. I might try that. To file towards me. It's a little harder for me to hold the angles correct and the right pressure. I'm already getting the angles off on that. So anyway, I'll turn that around and try to figure that out. Okay, I've got the saw turned around, and like I said, it's a little more awkward doing it this side, and my back's going to be where the camera is now. Got the with this long bar on here, it's over-centered on the saw. It's about a 36-inch bar. The saw balances out pretty nice on these 797s. This longer bar, a little bit nose heavy, so it winds up being down here. I've got it sitting up on a piece of wood, which means I'm going to have to pick it up every time I roll the chain forward. So I'll probably wind up, I like staying in one spot, getting my feet set in one spot and getting everything all set so I can keep my angles nice and uniform. Everything stays the same on with the file. It's a lot easier to get my angles the same if I keep my feet braced in the same spot. But when you start going down, you can go down the whole length of this long bar and file, without moving it, and so that's probably what I'll have to do with this one. But filing a long bar like this, especially, well, in here in the shop, they got shadows and stuff. Outside you're going to have shadows and stuff too, but usually brighter light. When you get older like me, you start having a little bit more trouble seeing. But what I like to do is put my finger on this last tooth that I filed, take it back to just past where it's comfortable for me to start filing the new tooth, and then release it. And I know that that's the tooth that I last filed. I don't have to hunt for it. I can start on the next tooth. That should be it. Nope, oh yeah, that's it. That's it, I got them all. It's a little harder to see when round filed because the angles cover up. You don't have as much surface area exposed there to be shiny to look at. But I missed the spot there. I'm going to get started with that spot. Yeah, they're all, so those sharp angles, they don't reflect the light the same way that a round file chain does. Hey, well, I got some screws in, the nuts in on the flywheel cover. I didn't, the ones I thought I had for the 740 didn't fit, or they weren't the right ones, so anyway, I had to go to the hardware store and just got some hardware store screws. We had a heck of a time getting feeding the nut in behind the crankcase cover for this one here in the middle, top middle of the flywheel cover, but I finally got it fed in there. And anyway, I got new screws on there, so chain's all sharpened up. We're ready to fire it up. Okay, well, it's dark out. I don't know how well this is going to turn out, but gonna give it a try. Just got back. It took me a little longer to get this together than I thought, which is usually the case. I had to run to town hardware store and get some screws that fit the flywheel cover, because I didn't have any that would fit quite right. So we got that done. Got the saw sharpened. Got a piece of frozen hemlock here. It's been about 10 degrees or so for the last few days, so this was a dead hemlock tree, but it's still been laying here for a few years, so a couple of years, so it's still pretty wet. I'm going to give it a try, sharpen the chain, going to give it a try and see how much better it cuts than it did the other day. So I just started the saw up and warmed it up for a couple minutes. Surprisingly, it started second pull again. That's pretty darn good, is my estimation, for a McCulloch. The bark is frozen hard onto this log. I'm going to try to get it cleaned up enough to keep the so we make a cut in there without tearing up the chain too bad. So anyway, we'll give it a try. Of course, now it won't start. Oh, I got the switch off. Well, it cuts now. The first cut was pretty impressive compared to what it was before it was sharpened.
that was it. The decompression lever still open. That second cut, I made some sawdust there. If I had this log up in the air a little bit more so I could cut right through it, it'd